forward-thinking fan. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Brian Kenny. One solid hour leading up to the Rangers and Tigers today. Live baseball right here on the network. Jack Leiter making his Major League debut. Al Leiter's son, our own Al Leiter. We're very happy and proud for Al and his whole family. Jack, the former #2 pick overall, on the Hill this afternoon. You'll see it live right here after we're done. Busy show, state-of-the-art in scouting. We'll talk with Dan Kantrovich, the VP of Scouting for the Cubs, a new focus on Japanese baseball at the Hall of Fame. We'll talk with Josh Rawitz, the president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, Ron Darling, Mike Lowell on the panel, Rob Parker in the showdown. A game last night played in 1 hour 49 minutes. Are the new Major League rules working? They made some tweaks in the offseason. We'll get you up to date. But first, we talked about this on our first day of the regular season. I said I didn't like it, but so far it seems to be working out in spectacular fashion. An unprecedented move. Mookie Betts, proven superstar, moving to shortstop at the ancient age of 31. If this is working, I do have a question. Let's start with a little digging in. To quickly explain, at the age of 31, a Major League player moves away from shortstop, not to it. Even superstar Hall of Famers Robin Yount, Ernie Banks got away from shortstop at a certain age. Shortstop is demanding and requires the range and speed of a young man. A player of the magnitude of Mookie Betts has never moved from an outfield spot to that difficult position at a post-prime age. My main concern was the wear and tear on Betts. The jury is still out. We're still in the opening month of the season. But as of right now, it's fair to say shortstop has not hurt Betts offensively. He has a .470 on base, slugging .667. 100 is league average, weighted runs created plus. Betts is over 200. He's at the strength of two men. So let's examine his actual defense. Coming into the season, Betts had only played 98 innings at shortstop his whole career. All 98 last year. He's already passed that this season. He's played 135 innings at short this season, so only 233 for his whole career. He proved last year that he could, as we say in the business, hold it down at short, which means he might not be Cal Ripken or Ozzie Smith, but he's reasonably good and he won't hurt you at the position. So it turns out, on an everyday basis, he's doing more than holding it down. The two main public defensive metrics, the StatCast metrics and defensive runs saved. DRS is defensive runs saved. He is +3 at defensive runs saved. There are elements of scouting to that. People are actually looking at the plays. He is, however, -1 in OAA, outs above average. That's a StatCast metric measuring range. And in the overall StatCast defensive metric, that's fielding run value, he is also -1. So StatCast is saying he's about league average, give or take, which is good. League average is good. But the metric that involves some scouting and looking at the plays, +3, that is a good bit, especially early, a good bit above average. The sample size is small. Let's check out a few plays. The first thing that you notice is his overall competence. His footwork is excellent. Look at this double play. He's just very baseball-y here, right? He's shortstop-y, fluid, confident, arm in sync with his feet. Next play, and this is a bonus, he does have excellent range on fly balls. He's an outfielder. You don't get that from many shortstops. Going straight back, we don't have a lot to work with, but chasing down a fly ball, that's a strength. He's an elite fielder with the ball in the air. That's just a great play. But the main job of a shortstop in both directions is to range and turn ground balls into outs. That's a tough play. In the hole, makes an excellent play, but he does bounce a lot of throws to first. It turns out his arm is not strong for a shortstop. His mile per hour is in the 16th percentile right now. Again, 100th would be you're the best in the league. He's at the 16th percentile. Doesn't stop him from getting outs, but it's something to consider. The arm is not strong. So if I'm wrong, and I could be, it's rare, Ronnie, but I could be. It happens, right? I do have this question, though. What was everyone doing putting this guy in right field all these years, if this is working? Betts was a tremendous right fielder, but on the defensive spectrum, which is based on positional difficulty, right field is only considered tougher than left field and first base. In Boston, Betts didn't play second base because of Dustin Pedroia. He played center 1 year, then he moved to right because of Jackie Bradley Jr., and he didn't play shortstop because of Xander Bogaerts, who broke in at the same time as Betts. Now, all those things made sense at the time in terms of roster utilization, and Betts would rack up outrageous defensive metrics in right field. But I'm sorry. If you're looking to maximize your roster production, you put the best possible bat at the toughest defensive position that he can handle, and you work around that. Mookie Betts shouldn't be working around other players. Other players should be working around Mookie Betts, like you revolve around the sun. So what if Betts had been playing shortstop all this time? Where would he rank? Well, we can look these things up. Here are the top shortstops with their WAR and their OPS plus. Man, it's not even close. His WAR, and we'll have to use his WAR accumulated mostly from right field. He had big defensive metrics there, which feed into this WAR number, 64.6 over Lindor, who's next at 42. But realize that WAR number would be much higher given the positional value that he would get from shortstop. So he is far and away number one in WAR. Above this is a golden age of shortstops as well. And in hitting, I went this deep to get Corey Seager, who misses a lot of time, but he's the best hitter of the bunch. He's at 133. Betts is still better. He is far and ahead the number one shortstop in baseball had he been playing shortstop all this time. Still decently ahead of Corey Seager in OPS plus. So if Betts had played shortstop, he would be the best and most productive shortstop of his generation. So I have to ask, what was everybody thinking? Did it just not occur to everybody? If it's so good now, where was this? I want to know what you think on X, at MLB Now. Should Mookie Betts have been a shortstop this whole time? Mike Lowell and Ron Darling are here. Mikey, you could feel the position at one point in your life. You tell me. Did we miss something? If he's so good now, were we missing something?
Well, first of all, not all men are created equal. And Mookie Betts, we can't box him into any category because he's doing things that we've never seen. When you do look at what you say baseball-y, when you look at his frame and you say, hey, he doesn't project, he looks more like a second baseman than short. So that's what the evaluators do at the minor league level. Where does it project? And you mentioned roster utilization. So if I'm putting my best player at this point, the Boston Red Sox, at the most premium position, are you better putting Xander Bogaerts where? Are you better putting Dustin Pedroia where? So his athleticism and his versatility and his greatness, I think made, especially in 2018, made the Boston Red Sox that perennial World Series champion because I have a very good shortstop in Xander Bogaerts. I have a very good second baseman in Dustin Pedroia. And now I have a very good right fielder in Mookie Betts.
However, wait, you get so much more. If we can go back to 2014 and say, this kid's a great second baseman, I think he can play shortstop. I would start there and move everybody else around.
I don't think all things evolve that way because I don't think he understood the game and his excellence and his strengths and weaknesses. Like, you learn a lot. Between 14 and here, that's a decade. You learn a lot of what you do and what you can't do. And
you don't think he could have played shortstop?
I think he could have. I think he could have, but I don't think he would have.
Usually guys move off the position.
I don't think he could have played it at this level because having played second base and having that knowledge and that experience of the outfield, the infield, I think it helps in footwork. And you see the arm strength. He does not have, that Rafael Vercal, maybe Gary Templeton back in the day, O'Neal Cruz, these rocket arms, but he makes the play.
Right.
And bouncing it means nothing if you could throw it to someone like Freddie Freeman who has great range. So I think it fits. It's just something so spectacular to see that at age 31, I'm going from right field to shortstop. It's a little different.
I'm only throwing in, I'm not disagreeing with you, and I have respect for what you're saying. You were there. But I'm saying, if he can do it at 31, I think he would have been really good at 22 and 23.
I don't deny that.
And it just didn't occur to people, or it was like, no, we got Pedroia. Pedroia's our captain. Wait, we've got Bogaerts. He's going to be a superstar. Jackie Bradley has great range, and he just got shuttled over there, and I'm wondering, did we miss something here?
Well, the issue you have here is that you have the flexibility of Mookie Betts almost working against him because the inflexibility of Pedroia, where else is Pedroia going to play?
Not going anywhere.
Nowhere.
Right.
Where else is Bogaerts going to play? Probably nowhere. So the inflexibility of those two guys, flexibility of Mookie, put him in the outfield. The other thing we have to kind of turn its head on is that he was able to, in the third position easiest to play, right field, he was allowed to mature as a hitter. Maybe he doesn't mature as quickly playing a real premium position at short or second base.
I was worried about him this year, Ronnie. I'm like, wear and tear. I don't want an oblique going on him, but he seems to be just fine.
I'm just saying at 21 years old, could he handle the position? Yes, he could. Would he be the offensive force that he was early in his career? You don't know that. Who knows? But, this doesn't come in a vacuum here. I mean, this happened because Gavin Lux is coming off a horrific injury and really was a little off in spring training, and they could not trust the shortstop position right now to him, and that's why Mookie Betts is there.
I hear everyone saying, oh, of course he can do it. And I was like, I don't know if he can do it. It's like, no, he's Mookie Betts. I'm like, all right, so if he can do it now, what was happening a decade ago? And Bill James was with your club back then, so I'm sure it occurred to somebody in your base. You had the Godfather himself in baseball ops. All right, next subject here. We had a ball game last night, played in an hour 49. Shortest 9-inning game since 2010. Tanner Houck threw a shutout, but we haven't really revisited time of game. And this is where I want to get on this, Ronnie. I'll start with you.
Sure. year.
Because last year in April, pitch timer came in immediately. We dropped off a half hour of dead time. We got to 2 hours, 37 minutes. I don't think a lot of people know this. By the time we got to September, look at it there, 2 hours, 44. It kept creeping up, and that's why baseball then implemented a number of rules with the pitch timer and also just a few tweaks here and there, mound visits, that sort of thing, to get it back down. We are now back at 2 hours, 38. So we're back to what we were doing in May of last year. You call games for the Mets still.
Yeah.
You're involved with TBS as well. Are you sensing those rules made a difference, or are we just early in the season?
No, the rules certainly made a difference. It's some of the greatest rule changes in the history of professional sports. But what happens over time, these athletes who are so good at getting under the rules also know a little gamesmanship as the season goes along. And as a starting pitcher, what can I do maybe to give me a blow here or there? Oh, I don't like this ball. Throw it out. Those are the kind of things that happen. What has happened now in dropping the 2 more seconds with a guy on base from 20 to 18 is that I think we've stripped it down as far as we can go, as far as pushing the pitchers to be ready, pushing the hitters to try to process all they have to process before the pitch comes. And I think at some point, the only thing I would change, and I said this last year, the only thing I would change is the hitters get per at bat 1 timeout.
Okay.
I would give a pitcher 1 timeout per inning. When everything is going nuts, 2nd and 3rd and 2 outs, Mike Lowell's up. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to throw to him 2-2. I need a moment.
You could disengage. You could use a disengagement. You're only allowed 2, right? But not enough.
I think just in a big moment, I think you should allow the pitcher a chance to just regroup and get in a good headspace before he has to deliver the pitch.
Sounds reasonable. In practice, I wonder, like, it's something that's like, oh, everybody's taking the timeout every timeout. Where are you?
Well, the initial pitch clock, love it. I mean, for fans, for everyone, I thought it was a great thing. I'm not a fan of the 2 seconds. I'm not a fan because I don't think we're changing it's not a 28-minute difference. What is it, a minute and a half? I want to see the fan that says, oh, it was 2:20, that was great. If it's 2:30, I'm not paying my ticket tomorrow. And I do believe, and I'm usually pro all the rules, more pro position player as opposed to pitcher. I think we're putting the pitchers in a box where we're squeezing them in a little bit, 2 more seconds. Well, if we can shave 2 more seconds and just have it as no one on, like I think you need time. I think you need, like Ronnie alluded to, maybe not, if it's not the timeout, because then there'll be that game. There's a pitcher, and then is he enabled to timeout every hitter? But I think you need to take a little bit of a mental break. I'm not really sold on it's causing injuries, but these guys are max effort guys. You know, it's 97 to 100 coming out of the pen.
Maybe it can't be.
It might be.
Right. So, but also, wait, but I just want to say, look, you're right. Like the extra 2 seconds, I didn't think, oh, thank goodness they're doing this. But the 7 minutes came from somewhere. Right? An extra 7 minutes per game were coming on its totality. So, right, there was a little creep backward toward that. So I'm glad something was done. It seems to be working so far.
But I don't think 7 minutes change. 28 minutes changes it. 7 doesn't for me.
7 is getting toward the border of where I don't like. I think it's creeping back. And right, it's in a player's interest to spread things out. So they're going to push, just naturally do it. I think you got to rein that in, which I think they have. I hear you on that, but I think they got to rein that in.
The 2 seconds will also help the running game. Guys will have less chance to kind of hold guys close. All
right, we're going to take a short break. I reserve the right for a little bit. But I really wanted your take on this. For those of us who have been around a little while, I talked about this with Mad Dog. Dwight Gooden's 1985, of course, his number was retired over the weekend. And because he's not when guys don't make the Hall of Fame, you kind of tend to forget about a lot of greatness, and Gooden was fantastic. Was that the best pitching season you've ever seen? Gooden, 1985.
100%. I mean, he was the best player in baseball. And I think people do forget about Dwight Gooden, 24-4, and BK. I watched every pitch of every start that season. I was in New York. I just could not watch that kid. He was fantastic with the fastball and that Uncle Charlie that people couldn't hit. It was tremendous. I know a lot of people would like to think about he had the 1.53 ERA. Bob Gibson had the 1.12. And I'm not taking anything away from Bob Gibson, who was tremendous. My God. but that high mound made a difference in 1968.
Look at that curveball. By the way, it was elegant. You know, there's an elegance to it. It was just the way he unfurled. Look, I'll say this about Gibson. That 1968, again, was one of the lowest run-scoring years in history. A 1.12 is absurd, and Gibson threw 300 innings. I'm not saying that's not number one all the time. It could easily be there. But there were 7 guys with a sub-2 ERA that year in baseball. Qualifiers, guys who had over 160 innings. So it was not easier, but the run scoring was much lower that year. The other one, Oral Hershiser, 1988, the shutout record, and then Ron Guidry, 1978. Those, I think, are the main contenders.
Absolutely. Louisiana Lightning. I watched every one of his starts there. 1978, growing up in New York. Of course, I grew up as a Mets fan, but I could not turn away from Guidry. He was electric, and you're right. He was that season was magical. I just could not get over how good he was and how unhittable he was. And you bring up Oral Hershiser, another one, just another fantastic year to streak. He was special.
Yeah,
but I would vote for Gooden. Gooden would be, to me, the best season we ever saw as a pitcher.
You know what I like about this? And just quickly, Rob, that we're talking about non-Hall of Famers. Again, I love the Hall of Fame, but we should talk about guys who are just below Hall of Fame level a lot more. Guidry, Gooden, Hershiser. Like, whether you think they're Hall of Famers or not, I don't think Gooden should be. I think Hershiser's a strong candidate. But to talk about true greatness at a high peak, we don't talk about those guys enough.
I'm glad you brought that up because somehow people think everybody belongs to be in the Hall of Fame, and everybody's not a Hall of Famer. Those guys were very good and should be recognized, but neither of them are Hall of Famers. They just aren't. They're just below that, and we should keep a really high standard when we talk about the Hall of Fame.
My Hall of Fame is bigger. I just need one extra wing, maybe 2. All right, Mets have won.
And you know what? My door is smaller, so you can't get in through the back door of my home.
I know. That's what you say. You want to squeeze, get a little tiny door just for the one guy. Babe Ruth slips in, and that's it. Mets have won 10 of 13. Rob, are they a playoff contender?
I'm not convinced that they are. I know the Braves can slug with anybody. Their pitching's questionable. Strider's hurt. So you can say, is there an opening? I still like the Phillies better. I still like the Braves better with their hitting. The Mets, I'm not convinced. I know they weren't as bad as the 0-5 start, but even this little stretch here, 10-3, which is great. I mean, to turn the season around, the season's not over.
I'll say this, Rob. They should be rebuilding, but I don't think they could with Lindor, Nimmo, and the last year of Alonso. I think they were in a bad spot. They should be rebuilding. I think even sticking to a push here will cost them down the road.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that, but you can't just totally rebuild in New York.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Of course you can. You've seen plenty of rebuilding teams in New York growing up. You just mentioned a whole era. Yes, you can. If the fans know you're going in the right direction, you absolutely can.
Well, you're asking people to pay top dollar, and I'm just saying people aren't looking for 100-loss seasons. There's a way of doing it to where it's still entertaining, and I get it to add in young players. But I'm talking about a total rebuild where you gut and get rid of the stars and just put kids out there. You could do that in Kansas City and a couple other places, but that's not going to work in Queens.
I would tear it down to the studs right there in Queens. People would love it. Be like those auto body shops right next to the stadium. All right, Rob, we got to go. I know Rob would like that.
All right. Hey, BK, what did I tell you about the Astros? Every week I'm going to remind you about the Astros.
Good. And next week I'll bring you, I'll throw some Ellie De La Cruz numbers your way. If we want to go tit for tat, we can do this all day, pal. All right, Rob. Thank you, my man. Take care.
All right, BK.
Rob Parker there on the showdown. When we come back, a new Japanese exhibit at the Baseball Hall of Fame as we anticipate, we don't know, but we would anticipate a positive vote for this man. We'll talk Ichiro and Ohtani with Josh Rawitz of the Baseball Hall of Fame. And we're joined now by Josh Rawitz, president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, a friend of the show here on MLB Now as we join you from Studio 42. Josh, always great to see you.
You too, BK.
This is a first of its kind. Now, you're making those announcements are going to be at Yankee Stadium coming up this weekend. Given the history of the United States and Japanese, I guess, joint baseball history. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so next summer in July of 2025, we're going to be opening up a new exhibit in Cooperstown. It's going to be called Yakyu Baseball. Yakyu is the Japanese Japanese word for baseball, and it's going to focus on the Trans-Pacific exchange of the game. It's been going on for over 150 years that baseball has been played in Japan, and of course we've seen the influx of incredible talent at the major league level, but this is going to cover pretty much every level and players, teams going back and forth between the two countries.
We're seeing such an influx even this year as Shohei Ohtani, obviously with the Dodgers, but also Shota Imanaga, who's had a great start with the Chicago Cubs. What was the first either emissary to go back or forth? Did Japanese players come here? Did United States players barnstorm in Japan? What was the first time?
So there was a gentleman in the Northeast who really introduced baseball in Japan 150 years ago. The earliest teams from Japan, from Keio University and Waseda, were about early 1900s, and then you start getting into when the Yankees teams and Babe Ruth are barnstorming around there. You've got the Brooklyn Dodgers teams in the 50s, and then all the way up through the WBC, modern times, where teams are going back and forth. So it's been going on, I think, a lot longer than people realize.
Now, this will also coincide with the first year on the ballot for Ichiro. Right, so Ichiro will be on the ballot. It's expected that he gets in. You don't know that. We don't know that, right? But this is coinciding. You'll have that exhibit up if Ichiro. Well, it'll be up either way. But if Ichiro does go in, then this will all coincide with what's in the museum.
Exactly. This December, when we announced the ballot for the Baseball Writers Association, was when that process will take place. And then this coming January, you'll be up in Cooperstown when we announce who gets in. Ichiro, this is his first year on the ballot. So if he does get in, this would be open at the same time.
First Japanese player in the Hall of Fame, then, in the United States National Baseball Hall of Fame.
He would be, first player from anywhere in Asia, yeah.
That is amazing, and there was a lot of talk about, well, what should count toward his eligibility? Do you foresee a time where it'll be world statistics will count toward eligibility, or are we just looking at United States Major League Baseball?
Yeah, for the most part, it really has been the major sports here in America, and so obviously we know that the Negro Leagues have been factored in now, and you're seeing a lot of people being elected based on those numbers. I don't know if we'll ever get to the point that leagues around the world are considered, but certainly what he did in America once he got here was pretty impressive, and obviously a lot of what people will be talking about when he's eligible.
Baseball fans should be planning a trip to Cooperstown at some point in your life to bring the family out and see it. What will people see? And you guys do such a great job with your exhibits. What will they see on exhibit, on display next year?
So what's really great, I mean, it's focused on players and teams, but we brought with us actually a couple of artifacts with us that would be fun to share. So one of them, if you think back to 1995 when Nomomania took over the world, and you'll see obviously we use gloves when we touch our artifacts, but this is actually baseball from the no-hitter that he threw in 1996, September 17th, 1996, at Coors Field. You think how hard it is to throw a no-no at Coors. So this is when you think about Nomomania, the first player who came over after Masanori Murakami in the 50s. Unbelievable to have an artifact like that he donated all the way up until modern times. This is actually from just a couple weeks ago. Shohei Ohtani, during his first homestand with the Dodgers, donated his jersey from a game just about 10 days ago. So pretty awesome that I think players recognize. We've been collecting artifacts for many, many years, going back to the NPB and everything else that goes on in Japan and the U.S., and all of it's going to be a part of this exhibit.
There is now, through the museum, an emphasis on international baseball to show the influx. Tell us about that. Like, you can see things that have come up in the last 10 years.
Yeah, so we actually have a Viva Baseball exhibit that focuses on all of Latin America, which is an incredibly important part of the history of the game. Obviously, this is going to be really a groundbreaking exhibit, as you said at the beginning. And then if you just look at, I mean, we've got artifacts focused on women in baseball. We just opened up, we're opening up in May, brand new exhibit focused on the black baseball experience called The Souls of the Game. So what we really try to do is look at the game from all sorts of different angles. We also have exhibits on baseball cards and exhibits on baseball at the movies. And really, for those who haven't been to Cooperstown, you got to check it out. It is a baseball lover's dream.
Right, and you can see the culture as it evolves through the decades, including now where you see so many great Japanese players playing in the United States. That's going to be a big summer, I would think, right? If Ichiro does get in, that it would anticipate it's something that is slightly different, right?
Yeah.
It is new.
No doubt. I mean, it would be incredibly unique, certainly, to have tourists from Japan coming to Cooperstown and the sorts of numbers that could drive. So our staff is already starting to think about what are we going to need in terms of signage, how are we going to make sure that we make everybody feel welcome. And I think we do a great job of that right now. But we've already started thinking about how might we get engaged, and that was really what this week's announcement is all about. It's kind of kicking off next summer's thinking.
That's tremendous. And I think if you have tourists from Japan, you want them to be in Cooperstown. Come see the United States. Go to Cooperstown. Get the best of the United States right there.
Well, when you think about it, so many people come to Manhattan and they'll go to Niagara Falls. they got to stop somewhere in between.
Right, there you go.
So we're hoping the tour buses just kind of pop over, stop in, and check out Cooperstown.
That's tremendous. Tell us about what you're going to be doing at Yankee Stadium this weekend.
So this Sunday, actually, we're going to be on the heels of the announcement at the Ambassador's residence in Tokyo. We're actually going to have Hideki Matsui and Roy White, both of whom played for the Yankees and for the Yomiuri Giants. They're going to be part of a news conference this Sunday before the game at Yankee Stadium. And again, just a chance for us to tell this same story to the American audience a few days after we break the news in Tokyo. That's
tremendous. Where's it going to be in the museum? I'm trying to envision it. Where are you going to have it? Do you know yet?
We're targeting the 3rd floor. It'll be on the 3rd floor of the museum, and still TBD exactly where. So
okay, probably go past Ebbets Field and then go around, and that's right around there.
You're in the right spot.
I can envision it right now. Josh, great seeing you here. Thank you so much. Again, as baseball in the Hall of Fame just shows more of the wide culture of baseball around the world.
We appreciate you helping us tell the story.
All right, thank you. Josh Rowitz there, National Baseball Hall of Fame. Great seeing you, Josh. Thank you.
You too, Brian.
When we come back, we'll get into the world of scouting. Chicago Cubs off to a pretty good start. We'll talk to Dan Kantrovitz, VP of Scouting for the Cubs, and how we're getting better at scouting. Or are we? That's next. Baseball player back in the day, played for Brown, former assistant GM for the A's, now VP of Scouting for the Cubs. Are you laughing at that? I heard you were a pretty good shortstop, Dan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, PK. It's as time has gone on, I think I've gotten better and better.
Go back, find your scouting reports, and redo those. Yeah, that's no problem. I have some wide-ranging questions here, Dan. So just to, stay with me on this, because it amazes me with analytics, with the high-level prospect circuit, that the shooting percentage in the draft, even in the first 2 rounds, which are the pick of the litter, still seems to be quite low. Why is that, again, with things developing the way they have the last 20 years?
Yeah, I think there's a variety of reasons why that could be the case. One, because there's just a lot of inherent luck involved in the draft. I think there's a lot of uncertainty involved in it as well. And then I think it goes to the measuring stick that people use to evaluate the draft, and you have to really break out the magnifying glass to, I think, properly evaluate it. And I think an analogy could be how we interpret one of your favorite statistics, batting average. And I think you look at the difference between a 300 hitter and a 350 hitter, and it's 0.05 numerically, but there's a pretty substantial difference in terms of how we would interpret the quality of those 2 hitters. And I think similarly, if you look at the draft, if you've got one team that's successful 30% of the time and another that's successful 35% of the time, I think that degree of improvement might not show up very clearly on some analyses, but at the same time, there's a pretty big gap in terms of how those 2 teams are being effective in the draft.
Ted, analytics gives you exact measurements and biomechanics. Has that driven it to tool-centric drafting, or has it gone that way, or do you have to be aware of going for tools as opposed to the actual results the player seems to be giving?
Yeah, I think depending on how you define tools, they certainly underlie a player's ability to have baseball skills and then eventually produce results on the field. And because we're looking at players that range in age from, say, 17 or even 15 on the international market to 22, 23, we have to be pretty cognizant of how those tools are developing over time and how they might change over time. But I think there are we've been able to gain some insights into some of the because of the technology, into what are the most important underlying tools, or what might suggest a player having future success going forward.
Now, you're a new age guy, obviously came about in this whole new age. You obviously use all this stuff. How do you use the proper amount, whatever you deem to be proper, of an assessment of work ethic and what they used to call makeup? How much do you try to factor that in?
Yeah, quite substantially. I mean, I think if you hear our major league players talk, if you listen to our Craig Counsell, our manager, or Jed and Carter in the office, I mean, when we're talking about even our current big leaguers, how they fit into the clubhouse, the way they go about their work, their makeup, as you say, is extremely important, and I think always will be. And so that has to be a pretty big part of the puzzle for us. Going back to last year when we drafted Matt Shaw. Our scouts loved how he looked on the field, his dynamic swing, but it wasn't really until we got to know him, on a personal level, and cemented that feeling at the combine that we had the confidence to draft him, because he's got in our estimation, pretty amazing makeup.
Right. Cut of jib index. I try to incorporate that. I don't have a number for it, but I would try. We could work on that. Cut of jib. Can we do that?
Let's do it.
I want to go in one other thing. Last year, Dan, you went in your draft. You haven't done this every single year, but you went college shortstop, college pitcher, college shortstop, college pitcher, college catcher. So that's 5 rounds. You didn't get to a U.S. high school kid until the 11th round. What's the method of operation there?
Right. So I think there were, some high school kids drafted prior to that actually might have been born outside the U.S. But I think that, in general, it's hard to forecast who's going to be available when you get past the first and second round. And I think at that point, you're just trying to grab as much future WAR as you can, considering that there's a limited amount each year in the draft. And whoever gives, whatever players in position to give us the best chance of collecting as much future WAR, future wins as possible, that's what we're going to take, whether that's a 22-year-old college senior or a 18-year-old high school player.
And I could follow up for a half hour. Dan, let's do this another time. I've got all these follow-ups that I have on this, but we don't have time on live TV. But thank you so much for coming on. Love to do it again sometime.
My pleasure, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dan. Dan Kantrovich there again. Millie, what makes it most valuable is playing shortstop and slugging .550. Then there's more talent, in right field in the corner positions. No disrespect intended. Yeah, there's just more talent out there.
Don't yell at Millie.
I'm sorry, Millie. How about, can I yell at Harry? No. I like that. No. Exceptional hitters should stay away from the 3 hard infield positions. Longevity of career is the first goal of elite run.
Yeah, Harry, third base is really hard compared to shortstop.
No, you play short. If a guy can play shortstop and hold it down, you play him at shortstop. All right, thanks, Harry. Who knows? Anyway, let's do baseball plays of the day. Again, Ron Darling, Mike Lowler here. He wouldn't have scored from first. You know what? They won this game by 1 run. There it is.
If you think of baseball like marionettes, when that ball went up and popped up as this runner scores, the second baseman should filter close to the first baseman to give him some help in case he loses it in a dome. The shortstop should cover second base, and then you're all covered.
Yeah.
Everyone should be moving towards that position.
Right. It makes me think, because when we're thinking analytically, we're thinking in terms of bases, which leads to runs, which leads to wins. But in the real world, it operates a little differently. They got an extra run. That run won the game. That wins in the books. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's an exponential value. It's bigger than just it led to a base, it led to a run, it leads 10 runs lead to a win. No. That led to an actual win in the real world.
So Shanuel and Bo Porter created a run.
Yeah.
Do they get credit for that?
No. That's what I'm saying. These are the hidden value of baseball.
He should get a whole point of WAR. Like, he is one more win better than everyone else.
Somewhere like that. Somewhere, again, in the 1800s, I always point this out, one of the main stats in the box score was bases gained. Ooh, and it was like from cricket. And they tried to measure this, but they realized, all right, a single's more important than just taking an extra base. But it's not nothing. Taking the extra base and getting in scoring position. All right, time for Think Baseball. The guys don't get the question ahead of time, so we'll do this. So we're asking you, we're talking about shortstops and Mookie Betts now being a major run producer at shortstop.
It has been processed normally.